The station floated in silence above a blue and gold planet. Its long corridors glowed dimly under flickering lights, the air filled with the low hum of alien machinery. Most of the crew had already left after the first warning alarm. Only a few stayed, those who were not fast enough or not brave enough to run. In one corner of the cargo deck, a small human child sat alone. Her knees were pulled close to her chest, her eyes wide with confusion. She had been brought here with her mother, part of a diplomatic visit that was supposed to bring peace between humans and the Valari Empire. It wasn't peace that came. It was fear. The Valari were tall, thin beings with long arms and mask-like faces. Their voices were soft and smooth, but their hearts were made of ice. When the alarms began to sound, they accused the humans of betrayal. The child's mother had tried to protect her, shouting that humans came in peace. The aliens didn't listen. She was taken away, and the girl was left behind. The corridor echoed with the sound of boots. 3 Valari soldiers walked closer, their long fingers holding stun weapons. They didn't see the small creature crouched in the shadows behind a metal crate. The honey badger had been quiet since the attack began. Its black and white fur was dusted with metal shavings, its golden eyes fixed on the girl. Humans called it Scout. The aliens called it the Pest. It had been the child's companion since birth, a loyal, fearless animal from Earth's deserts. But now, in the cold steel of an alien ship, it looked like a nightmare given shape. One soldier leaned down, staring at the child. "Human," he hissed. "Your mother caused this war. Tell us where she is." The girl didn't move. Her lips trembled. The honey badger moved closer, silent as a shadow. The smallest sound, a claw against metal, made the alien turn. "What is that noise?" he said. Before he could finish, a growl rolled through the hall. It was deep, raw, and ancient. The honey badger leaped forward. The first Valari didn't even have time to scream. The sound of claws against armor filled the air. Sparks flew. The girl covered her ears. When she opened her eyes, one soldier was already down, the second stumbling backward with a broken mask, and the third dropped his weapon in panic. The small creature stood between the girl and the aliens, its fur rising, its teeth bared. The honey badger did not attack again immediately. It stared at them, breathing hard, waiting. The Valari had fought beasts before, big ones, fast ones, but this one had eyes that understood hate. "Retreat!" one of them shouted. They ran, their long legs scraping against the deck, leaving trails of black blood. The child whispered, "Scout, thank you." The creature turned its head, looked at her, and made a low noise that almost sounded like comfort. It stayed beside her, its body between her and the empty corridor. But the ship was alive with more than fear. The alarms changed tone, a signal of containment failure. The Valari had started destroying parts of their own station to trap the humans still aboard. Somewhere deep below, explosions shook the walls. The girl flinched as the lights flickered out. The honey badger lifted its nose, sniffing the air. The smell of burning metal spread fast. It wasn't just heat, it was war. A voice came from the intercom, sharp and cold. "Contain all human life forms. If you see the creature, eliminate it. It is not to leave the ship." The badger growled softly. It understood enough. It pressed closer to the girl and began leading her through the narrow maintenance paths, small enough for her to crawl through, too tight for the aliens to follow. Everywhere around them, the ship groaned under fire. The child kept glancing at her small protector, whispering in broken words, "We have to find Mama. Please." Scout paused, sniffed the air again, and moved faster. Somewhere, deep inside the ship, there was another heartbeat. Faint, familiar. The honey badger recognized the scent. It was human. It was her mother. The Valari began to regroup. They brought energy drones, hovering machines with glowing eyes that tracked movement. They filled the corridors, scanning for life. But the honey badger wasn't just fighting to protect. It was hunting now. It had seen the fear in the child's eyes, and something inside it burned hotter than plasma fire. It had one goal: make sure nothing that scared the child ever walked again. As they reached the lower decks, explosions echoed above them. The girl stumbled, and the honey badger nudged her forward, guiding her with small growls. The ship's artificial gravity flickered, up became down, walls became floors. They reached an airlock door marked with human symbols, one of the emergency pods. The badger scratched at the control panel. The child reached up, pressed a button, and the door hissed open. But before they could enter, shadows appeared in the doorway behind them. 3 more Villari, weapons raised, eyes glowing with fury. The child froze. The badger turned slowly, teeth gleaming under the red warning lights. This time, it didn't wait. The corridor filled with movement and light and sound, pure chaos. And above it all, the child's small voice whispered something the galaxy would never forget. "Get them, Scout." The scream that followed was the beginning of something much bigger than a fight. It was the start of a war the Villari would never survive. The smoke from burning circuits drifted through the corridor like dark mist. The alarms had stopped, cut off, silenced. In their place came only faint echoes of claws scraping against metal. Somewhere deep inside the Villari warship, fear had begun to spread like infection. The crew spoke in low voices, trying to keep calm. "It's only an animal," one whispered. "A primitive beast." But his hands shook. They all remembered the security footage, just flashes of movement, bodies thrown like paper, armor torn open like soft fruit. The captain of the Villari ship stood before a holo display, his face pale under its blue light. "That thing killed a full squad," he said coldly. "Find the human child. Use her as bait. And this now." Down in the lower decks, the child sat quietly near a broken maintenance vent. The honey badger was cleaning blood from its claws. Its breathing was steady, its golden eyes calm again. The girl held her knees, whispering softly. "Scout, they'll come again." Scout looked at her for a long moment, then made a low rumble that sounded almost like reassurance. It had protected her once. It would do it again. The ship trembled. Heavy footsteps echoed above them. The Villari soldiers were spreading out, sealing the exits. Their drones floated through the corridors, red lights scanning every corner. The honey badger's ears twitched. It caught a sound far away, a faint metallic rhythm, alien armor moving. It stood up, sniffing the air, and then looked back at the girl. It didn't speak, but she understood. "Stay here." The small creature vanished into the darkness. Moments later, a drone's red light passed over the vent where the girl hid. It paused, mechanical eye tilting. Then, crack! The light flickered once, twice, and went dark. A low thud followed, then silence. One by one, the drones stopped reporting. The Villari captain turned toward his officers. "What is happening to our scouts?" No one answered. On Deck C, a squad moved in formation, weapons charged. They stepped carefully through the narrow hall, lights flickering. The walls were smeared with something black. One soldier knelt to inspect it. "Blood," he muttered. "But it's—" He didn't finish. Something dropped from above. A flash of claws, a growl that vibrated through their bones, and then screaming. The honey badger moved too fast to track, its size small, its strength monstrous. When the last soldier fell, the creature stood still, breathing hard. The hall was silent again. Its fur was darkened, its eyes blazing with a cold fire. It didn't kill for hunger. It killed because someone had made a child cry. Meanwhile, the girl waited. The floor shook again, and a faint hiss of air told her that another section of the ship had lost pressure. She hugged herself tighter. The small golden ball the younger badger had been holding earlier rolled near her feet. She picked it up, it glowed faintly, humming with power. It was a memory core, human tech. Her mother's work. Tears welled in her eyes. "Mama!" she whispered. Far away, Scout stopped moving. Its head lifted. It could smell her fear through steel and smoke. It turned and began running back, claws clicking on metal like a heartbeat. At that same moment, the Valari captain issued his final order. Open the inner bay doors. Flush the decks. If the creature dies, so be it. If the child dies, better her than all of us, the vents roared. Wind howled through the corridors, pulling debris and bodies toward the open vacuum seals. The girl screamed as her hiding spot tore apart. Her fingers clung to a pipe, air rushing past her face. The small honey badger that had stayed with her slid across the floor, claws scraping, until Scout crashed into the chamber like a living bullet. It bit into the floor grating and dug in, its body shielding the girl from the pull. Its muscles shook, but it didn't let go. Not even when the metal beneath its claws began to tear. Then the emergency doors sealed again. The roar stopped. Silence returned. The girl sobbed quietly into Scout's fur. The smaller badger climbed up beside them, panting hard. The ship's artificial voice announced calmly, "Containment failed. Multiple sections compromised." Scout stood again. Its gaze turned toward the upper decks. It could hear the Valari regrouping, shouting orders, blaming each other. Somewhere among them, a voice repeated, "It's only an animal." But even they didn't believe it anymore. As the child followed her protector down the dark hallway, a distant explosion rocked the ship again. Scout didn't look back. It moved with purpose now, faster, more focused. The scent it followed wasn't just the girl's mother anymore, it was vengeance. Hot and heavy in the recycled air. And in the silence between alarms, something new began to hum, a rhythm deep inside the ship's heart. The humans on the planet below had detected the distress call. Reinforcements were coming, but by the time they arrived, the war might already be over. Because somewhere between rage and love, the honey badger had decided, no one scares a human child and lives to tell the story. The Valari flagship drifted through the void like a wounded animal, its once perfect hull now scarred and cracked. Inside, the air stank of ozone, fear, and something far worse, the smell of defeat. No one said it aloud, but every alien aboard the ship could feel it. Something unstoppable was moving among them. Something small, something furious, something with purpose. Scout. The honey badger had changed. Its movements were faster, more precise, guided by more than instinct now. The engineers had whispered once that human pets were simple creatures, but this one had seen battle, watched humans, learned their patterns. It remembered every sound, every face, every threat, and it had decided that mercy was not part of its mission. The child followed at a distance, clutching the small, glowing memory core her mother had built. Her small feet tapped softly on the metal floor as Scout led her through the twisted corridors. Every so often, Scout would stop, tilt its head, and listen. Somewhere nearby, alien boots scraped against steel, weapons hummed. The Valari were hunting them again, but now they were the prey. Scout moved first. It darted into a side tunnel, vanishing like smoke. The child stayed where it told her, behind a pile of metal crates. She hugged her knees, listening. The aliens came into view. 5 of them, moving in formation, scanning with shoulder lights. One muttered, "Thermal reading ahead. Small life form." They advanced slowly, careful, weapons ready. Then one of them turned around, frowning. "Where is—" A flash of black and white tore through the shadows. The lead soldier went down, throat shredded. The others screamed, firing blindly. Bolts of blue plasma lit up the corridor, striking walls and ricocheting. The honey badger leapt from the wall to the ceiling, then to the floor again, too fast to track. When it ended, only silence remained. The air shimmered with heat and smoke. The badger stood in the middle of the carnage, fur singed in places but eyes burning brighter than ever. It turned and looked at the girl. She didn't cry. She just nodded as if she understood. This wasn't over. They kept moving deeper into the ship. Scout led her toward the central deck, toward the control chamber where the Valari captain had locked himself away. The badger's nose twitched. It could smell him, smell the same cold scent as the ones who'd taken the girl's mother. Every corridor told a story now, walls slashed, armor shredded, signs of a war being fought by one creature. The Valari soldiers who survived refused to speak above a whisper. The human's beast, they called it. The demon of Earth. The captain, pale and furious, slammed his clawed hand on the table. "You're telling me a pet is destroying my ship?" No one answered. They all knew it was true. He pointed at the display showing the child's location. "Bring me the girl! That creature will come for her." We ended here. His guards left in silence. The captain stood alone, breathing fast. He stared out the viewport into the stars, muttering, "Humans, always bringing chaos." Minutes later, the control room lights flickered. A faint sound echoed, a slow, dragging scrape across the floor. The captain turned sharply, raising his weapon. "Show yourself!" The sound stopped. Then the ceiling vent above him burst open. Scout dropped like a meteor. The alien fired, but too late. The shot hit the floor as the honey badger slammed into him, claws slicing across his chest. He roared and swung, hitting it hard enough to send it flying into a console. Sparks exploded. The honey badger stumbled, smoke curling from its fur, but it didn't fall. It stared at him, panting, blood dripping from its teeth. "You can't win, animal," the captain spat, reaching for another weapon. "You're just flesh and fury." Scout's gaze didn't waver. Behind him, the door slid open. The child stepped in, holding the glowing memory core. The captain froze. His weapon lowered slightly. "The child," he sneered. "You came to watch, little human. Watch your protector die?" The girl shook her head slowly. "No," she pressed a button on the core. The hologram that appeared was of her mother, a message recorded before the attack. The woman's voice was soft but steady. "If you find this, my little one, remember, courage is not about fighting. It's about protecting what matters." Scout's breathing steadied. The girl's eyes hardened. The captain laughed bitterly. "Touching. But both of you end here." He raised his weapon. Scout moved first. The console lights turned red. The sounds of claws, roars, and shattering glass filled the room. The captain's screams echoed down the hall, then stopped suddenly. When the lights stabilized, the girl was sitting on the floor again, holding the memory core close. Scout stood in front of her, blood on its claws, its chest heaving. The captain lay motionless, his weapon bent in half beside him. The honey badger looked at the stars beyond the cracked viewport. For a moment, the galaxy was quiet. But Scout wasn't finished. It turned to the navigation panel, sniffing the air. There were other ships, Valari cruisers nearby, reinforcements. It looked back at the girl. Her voice was small but steady. "Are we going home?" Scout blinked once. Then it pressed a claw against the console, activating the communication system. The Valari fleet would soon hear the last sound they expected, the growl of a small Earth creature declaring war on them all. The galaxy would remember that day forever. The day one frightened child and her honey badger turned fear into extinction. The Valari fleet had surrounded their flagship, waiting for orders. From a distance, the ship looked like a dark moon, silent and still. Inside it, there was only ruin. Communications were dead, life signs flickered, and something small kept moving through the wreckage like a ghost made of rage. The honey badger was no longer hunting. It was cleansing. Scout moved through smoke and fire, carrying the girl wrapped in a thermal cloak it had found. Her tiny face was pale but calm. She had stopped crying hours ago. Now she simply watched, wide-eyed, as her protector tore through the halls of metal and death. Each time they crossed a fallen alien, the girl would whisper, "They shouldn't have done it." And Scout, silent as ever, seemed to agree. Outside the ship, the Valari commander of the nearest cruiser stared at his screens. "The flagship isn't responding," he hissed. "Send in retrieval pods." When the pods connected, they transmitted one brief signal before going silent. The footage recovered later showed only chaos, flashing lights, screams, a blur of black and white fur, and then nothing. Inside, Scout crouched beside a fallen pod, its claws dripping with oil and blood. It understood now. The aliens would never stop. They would keep coming until there was nothing left to threaten, so it decided to end it. The honey badger guided the child toward the ship's main control core. The room was vast, filled with pulsing lights and humming circuits. The floor was cracked from explosions, and sparks rained from the ceiling like burning snow. The girl held the glowing memory core close. Mama said this could send a signal, she whispered. Scout tilted its head, watching her press her small hands against the console. If we can call home, maybe humans will come. The creature made a low, rumbling sound, something halfway between a growl and a sigh. It wasn't sure humans could arrive in time, but it would keep her safe until they did. Then the ship shuddered. Warning sirens began to wail again. Through the open blast door, more Valari soldiers poured in, shouting orders, weapons raised. "Contain them!" one barked. "Protect the core!" Scout moved before the first shot fired. The sound was pure chaos, claws against steel, plasma bolts burning through smoke, the hiss of armor tearing. The aliens fell one after another, their perfect discipline broken by panic. The child covered her ears and ducked behind the console, watching her protector move through them like a storm made of muscle and fury. A plasma bolt struck the honey badger's side. It stumbled but didn't fall. Instead, it turned toward the shooter, snarling, and leapt so fast the alien's weapon clattered away before his scream finished. When the room went quiet again, Scout stood panting in the center, blood matting its fur, its eyes glowing with reflection from the console lights. The girl ran to it, pressing her small hands against its shoulder. "You're hurt," she whispered. Scout looked at her, then nudged the glowing memory core in her hands. She blinked, then understood. "You want me to finish Mama's work?" Her fingers moved over the controls, the hologram flickering to life again. Her mother's voice filled the room, soft, human, full of warmth. "If the signal activates, it will reach the Terran fleet. They'll come for you. Be brave, my child." Outside, the alien cruisers were preparing to fire on the damaged flagship. The Valari commander sneered. "End this," he said coldly. "Erase the mistake." But inside, the girl's trembling hands pressed the final key. The console flared bright blue. A pulse of light burst from the ship, spreading through space like a silent scream. Scout turned toward the sound of approaching footsteps again. Dozens of aliens filled the corridors outside. It knew there would be no end to them. "Not yet," the badger growled softly, a sound like thunder beneath its breath. Then it turned off the safety locks on the ship's reactor. The girl gasped. "What are you doing?" Scout looked back once, eyes calm. It wasn't running anymore. It was choosing. The aliens rushed in. The lights flared. The ship's engines screamed as energy surged through every deck, and then the Valari flagship exploded. From the fleet's command bridge, the Valari commander watched in horror as a sun was born before his eyes, white fire consuming everything, wiping out every trace of the ship, his soldiers, and the creature they feared. But just before the explosion, a small escape pod shot free, barely visible against the blast. Inside it, the girl sat shaking, clutching the glowing memory core. Smoke curled from the small metal floor, and beside her, Scout's burned body was still. For a moment, she thought it was gone. Then it opened one golden eye. She smiled weakly. "We did it, Scout. We sent the message." The stars ahead shimmered. The pod drifted into the dark. Far away, Earth received the signal. The Terran fleet mobilized. The war was no longer unexpected. It had become inevitable, and it had a name now, one whispered in fear across every Valari world, the honey badger of Earth. The message from deep space reached Earth 12 hours after the Valari flagship exploded. At first, the signal was broken, static interference, fragments of light and sound. Then it stabilized. A child's voice whispered through the comms, "They scared me. Scout stopped them?" Silence filled the Terran command center. Generals, admirals, and engineers froze mid-sentence. One by one, they turned toward the glowing hollow screen that showed a small girl wrapped in a blanket, her eyes red but alive. And beside her, half covered in blood and ash, lay the most unlikely hero anyone had ever seen. The honey badger blinked once, weak but breathing. No one in that room spoke for several seconds. Then Admiral Kira Nolan stood up. "Track that pod, now!" The technicians scrambled. Signals crossed the screen, coordinates triangulated, and soon the words they were waiting for appeared. "Surviving human pod located. Velocity, stable." The Admiral clenched her jaw. "Send the fleet." In the deep void, the child's escape pod drifted silently. Inside, emergency lights glowed pale blue. Scout rested beside her, its fur scorched, chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. The girl held the memory core tightly, whispering to it like a prayer. Mama said humans always come back. She said we never leave our own behind. Scout's ear twitched at her voice. It tried to lift its head, but didn't move far. Instead, it leaned against her, letting out a low rumble. Even half dead, it was still watching the door, still guarding. The stars outside shimmered. Then, from the distance, light appeared. A fleet, dozens of ships emerging from hyperspace. Sleek black hulls bearing the insignia of Earth's United Defense Forces. Their engines glowed like suns. The Terran fleet had arrived. The child's pod was retrieved within minutes. As the airlock hissed open, human soldiers in armored suits stepped forward. They froze when they saw her. The tiny girl standing protectively in front of a badly burned honey badger, her arms outstretched like a shield. "Easy," said one soldier softly, lowering his rifle. "We're here to help." Her lip trembled. "Don't hurt him," the soldier smiled behind his visor. "We wouldn't dare." They carried them both carefully aboard the flagship Soul's Wrath. The medics moved fast, sealing Scout's wounds, giving the girl warm blankets and food. For the first time in days, she slept. But not everyone aboard the Terran fleet could rest. The recovered data from the pod showed the truth. The Valari had ambushed a peace mission, killed civilians and captured humans for experiments. The recording from the ship's cameras, though partially corrupted, was still clear enough to horrify everyone. They saw what the child had seen. They saw what the honey badger had done. When the video ended, no one spoke. One Marine broke the silence, muttering, "That little monster fought harder than half our army." The Admiral looked at him sharply. "Not a monster, a protector." She turned toward the holo map showing Valari space. "They made a child cry. They burned our people alive. Now we show them what happens when humans stop being nice." Days later, the fleet was ready. The entire command bridge of Soul's Wrath hummed with energy as Admiral Nolan stood before the tactical map. Initiate Operation Badger. The name earned quiet smiles across the crew. It wasn't meant to be funny, it was meant to remind them why they were fighting. Scout, now healed and standing again, watched from a reinforced habitat near the command deck. Its golden eyes followed the movement of the stars. The girl sat beside it, feeding it small pieces of dried meat. "Are we going to where the bad ones live?" she asked softly. The Admiral knelt beside her. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to make sure they never hurt anyone again." The girl nodded. "Scout will help." The Admiral smiled faintly. "Oh, I know. When the Terran fleet entered Valari space, the aliens were not ready. They expected the usual: warnings, diplomacy, demands for peace. Instead, they saw dozens of human warships appear without a single broadcast. The first attack came silent and swift. Orbital stations vanished in seconds. Command ships exploded before their crews understood they'd been targeted. On every frequency, a single symbol appeared. The image of a honey badger's face, black and white, eyes glowing gold, and beneath it, a short transmission. "You made the child cry. Now you pay." Every Valari world received that message before contact was lost. From orbit to ground, the war that followed was nothing short of legend. The Terran Marines called it the Revenant Campaign. The Valari called it the Night of the Small Beast. And at the heart of it all, aboard Soul's Wrath, the little girl watched from the viewport as explosions lit up the sky. Her small hand rested on Scout's head. "Do you think Mama can see us?" she whispered. Scout looked up at her, then at the stars, and let out a low, soft sound that almost sounded like yes. By the end of the campaign, the Valari Empire no longer existed. Their worlds were abandoned, their fleets scattered. The galaxy learned something it had tried to forget. Humanity's kindness was deep, but its fury was deeper, and every soldier who fought in that war carried one small emblem on their armor. A stylized image of a honey badger standing beside a child. The symbol of what happens when innocence is threatened and the universe forgets who humans really are. The war ended not with victory parades, but with silence. Whole systems once claimed by the Valari Empire now drifted in darkness, their stations cold, their ships turned to dust. The galaxy had learned the name human again, and it whispered it carefully. On Earth, the stars over the northern hemisphere burned brighter than usual the night the Terran fleet returned. The girl stood at the viewport of the landing deck, small hands pressed against the glass. Scout sat beside her, fur clean again but streaked with faint scars, a living legend wrapped in muscle and memory. Below them, the blue planet shimmered. "Home?" she whispered. Scout made a low, rumbling noise in its throat, as if it remembered the word, too. When they landed, the hangar filled with soldiers, scientists, and diplomats. None of them dared step too close at first. They'd all seen the recordings the way that small creature had faced an empire. It wasn't just an animal anymore. It was history written in teeth and courage. The girl stepped forward and said softly, "This is Scout. He's my friend." That simple sentence broke the silence. Every soldier there, hardened veterans of a war no one expected, saluted. Over the next weeks, reconstruction began. The Valari threat was gone, but the message of that war spread faster than any fleet. Across neutral worlds, species whispered that the humans had unleashed something worse than vengeance, a bond between species that defied logic. They called it the Fury of Love. The Terran Assembly held a ceremony. The girl stood before the council, small and shy. Scout sat by her feet, tail flicking. Behind them, a banner hung high with words written in gold. "No one harms the innocent and walks away." Admiral Nolan spoke first. "This is not just a story of war," she said. "It is the story of what happens when compassion is met with cruelty, and how even the smallest among us can become the fiercest protector." Reporters called the girl the Child of the Badger. Artists painted the creature in countless forms: guardian, monster, hero. In every image, the truth stayed the same. It stood between humanity and everything that dared to hurt it. Months passed. The girl began to laugh again. She took lessons, made friends, and walked through sunlit gardens under open skies. Scout followed her everywhere. Slowly now, older but still strong. Wherever they went, people stopped and stared, some with awe, some with quiet gratitude. One afternoon, the girl sat under a tree overlooking the city. She looked up at the sky where the Terran fleet shimmered faintly beyond the atmosphere. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked softly. Scout lifted its head, eyes half closed, and made a gentle sound, half growl, half sigh. "They'll come," she said. "And we'll be ready." The wind rustled through the grass. The child closed her eyes, and for a moment everything was still. Then a voice echoed from the comm implanted in her wrist, a calm AI tone. "Incoming transmission from the outer colonies. Unknown signals detected." She opened her eyes and smiled faintly. "Guess peace never lasts long." Scout stood beside her, fur bristling slightly, claws digging into the soil. It didn't snarl this time. It simply waited. The child reached down, scratched its head gently, and said the same words her mother once told her. "Courage isn't about fighting. It's about protecting what matters." The honey badger tilted its head, as if remembering every battle, every roar, every moment it refused to die. Then it looked toward the stars again, because legends don't end. They watch, they wait. And they rise again when the universe forgets. And somewhere in the quiet void beyond the edge of known space, when alien signals whispered once more about the humans, another voice always followed: "Don't touch the child. Don't anger the badger." Because even after the fires of war faded, the story endured, of one frightened human child and the small creature that erased a species to protect her. The galaxy never forgot their names: Scout and the child, the honey badger of Earth.